the longer you live, the more important that Social Security strategy is. And if you have longevity on your side, you may want to wait until, 65, 66, 67, all the way to age 70 is a possibility. And
And welcome into your game plan for retirement with Northwestern Ohio's resource for a common sense approach to planning for your money, your finance, your investment, and retirement future. He is president and founder of McIntire Retirement Services, Chris McIntire. Chris, always a pleasure to have you here on the program with us. Thanks for sharing the time.
hey, good to be with you in a brutal winter we're having up here in Northwest Ohio, buddy.
Yeah, all over the place. It has been a colder than normal winter, it seems like, across the country, Chris.
Yeah, it sure has. And, we got the ice fishermen out there on the lake and keep watching the Weather Channel. At some point, the ice will break off and they always make the headlines there. And,
Some poor guys floating away, huh?
yep. And, hey, I like to ice skate and all of that, but I don't need to go way out there and catch some fish. I can go right up the street here and buy it and go home and cook it and stay warm. But I get it. I get
I've kind of always wanted to do it though. That might be something that at some point in time in my life I can just say, yeah, I've done that.
Yeah, yep, exactly. And it's kind of neat up here. The boat ramp's free, so solid enough you can actually drive your snowmobiles and cars and all that out there. And it's interesting to see here at Catawba Island State Park.
Well, I always have made the comment if you want to see some of the worst of humanity, just hang out around boat ramps, right? Things happen.
You betcha, yeah, especially when a storm's coming in. That's
Yeah.
when it gets interesting. But
Yeah.
anyway, that's not what we're here to talk about today, are we,
Well,
Peter?
we are going to be talking about big mistakes, and sometimes big mistakes can happen there at boat ramps too. But we're talking more of a financial perspective, mistakes that can derail or impact your retirement in a negative way. And Chris, retirement's not about being perfect, but it is about avoiding the avoidable mistakes. And big mistakes that retirees make can derail their retirement. And it's often like a culmination of small decisions or decisions that may have even occurred decades ago that end up impacting the later years of retirement. So we want to give the foresight to you, ladies and gentlemen, to try to be aware of these mistakes and, where possible, avoid them. Because it's been said smart people learn from their own mistakes, but we do not have that time or luxury in retirement. And one of the big services that you provide, Chris, is a perspective that has seen it before. You have helped people through retirement numerous times. You've helped so many across Northwestern Ohio achieve a more prosperous, stable, and secure retirement. You've seen some of the mistakes that have been made as well, and how it has impacted people. And that's why you do offer to put that game plan for retirement together for viewers and listeners of the show.
Yeah, we sure do, Peter. And I was my wife and I were talking, and Robin is 65 and I'm 60, and we were just talking here recently. And our one mistake that we've got here is thinking retirement is just stopping work. You
Yeah.
know, and as Robin has turned 65, she's pulled back from full-time work at the office, and she's kind of working full-time helping my aging parents out right at the moment. So maybe she wants to come back into the office, and God bless them. But we were talking the other day, and she's like, I've got more extra time on my hands right now, and said, I never really thought about it, but what am I going to do with it?
Hmm.
And especially here in Ohio in the middle of winter, it's not like you can go out for a walk or anything like that. I mean, it's brutal cold at times. And, but just, knowing what your purpose is. We don't have children and grandchildren, and, nieces and nephews live an hour to 2 hours away. So it's not like they're next door in the same town. So, you really need to think about how you're going to, cognitively fill that time, keep your brain sharp, keep your physical fitness and whatnot up.
Yeah, you said it, purpose. I think that innately we are designed to drive toward some purpose. And the moment that we find ourselves without one, I think that we tend to decline quicker, or just find ourselves kind of rusting, if you will, right, Chris?
Yeah, yeah, atrophy, if you will.
Yeah.
If your muscles aren't moving. I've been chatting with my dad here. He's got a real bad arthritis in his ankle, so he's losing his mobility, and we've been encouraging him to take some more action than he is to keep that going.
Got to move more.
Yeah, yep, you got to keep moving, and he's 92, so he's done
Tough.
very, very well for sure. But boy, you get bone on bone, and that's just that's painful. But that can cause you to lose your independence, and
Yeah.
most people would much rather stay at home than go into some type of facility.
Well,
Um,
Chris, you're right. It's not just the absence of work, though, and more free time. It's the absence of a paycheck. It's the absence of the social network. It's the absence of that motivation and drive. And in reality, retirement's a completely different phase of our life with new financial rules as well that we have to understand, new risks, new decisions that we will face. Income changes dramatically. Time structure disappears on us. So the retirement is not the finish line. It is a transition. And we really should think a lot more about what we are transitioning to, as you put it, from our purpose, from our activity, but also how the finances will work. And too many times, I think that part is overlooked. No clear plan financially for retirement.
Yeah, absolutely. And when we talk about planning for retirement, income plan would be topic number one right there. Kind of our subcategory here is, what is the income plan as you're going to go into retirement? You don't want to retire one day and say, okay, now what do we do? Let's talk about this well ahead of time, and try to be much more proactive than reactive, if you will. And I think that's Robin and I's our personal lives, we try to be as proactive as we possibly can. And we have the benefit of decades of experience of dealing in this marketplace, and we see the pitfalls and the problems that happen to so many people. And I think that's something that we benefit from. We learn from other people's mistakes as well. And as Robin has taken less of a load of the business, it's certainly given her a chance at home to say, hey, we've got all these subscriptions that we're doing, can we get rid of some of them? And man, there are a lot of them, Netflix and blah, 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 all the streaming services, the cable, is your phone bill the best it can be? So, when we talk about income plan, we could also talk about the expense plan as well. And, watching, knowing where that money's going, knowing what's coming in, knowing what has to go out, and what can you live without if you needed to.
Well, good for her. I know it's a financial family here, but yeah, not keeping anyone in the dark is certainly a big mistake to avoid as well. I know that's a little later in our list here, but Chris, having that insight on where the money's coming in, where it's going out, having control of it, that's one of our best assets for lasting financial confidence. One of the things that can wash away that financial confidence is a volatile stock market. And mistake number 3 on your list is people tend to stay too aggressive for too long.
Yeah, Peter, and I just was turning the page there along with you on mistake number 3. And when the stock market is running as good as it has here for the last couple of years, from we'll say 2023, 2024, 2025, is it is easy to get greedy. It's human nature to say, hey, I've been 80% in stocks basically all my life. I'm retired right now, but the market's performing very well. Let's just continue down that same path. It's worked very well for us. And we often say, here on the show, as we make, you and I are sports fans, we make our sports analogies, is that, look, offense wins games, but defense wins championships. So, some sort of risk mitigation strategies certainly will benefit you. To have some risk off money, if you will. And again, if you do this the right way, we have our friend Dave Gaylor's book, Income Allocation. And in that, he describes if you incorporate a safe money strategy, you can take the rest of your dollars and maybe even be more aggressive with that over the long haul and try to boost your returns over time. And, not everybody has that's listening to the show today has that degree of risk tolerance. So, we're talking to a wide audience here. So we want to make sure that we're cognizant of, look, some people are conservative by nature. some investors are aggressive by nature. And, I got 60, 70-year-old clients that have a fair amount of Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies and things like that, gold and silver, which have obviously done incredibly well. And then we have other clients that just incredibly safe, don't want any part of all of that. And, that's an individual's choice, obviously, usually through past experiences dictates that.
Well, how you are going to be aligned is going to be determined by your plan, ladies and gentlemen. Once you've got the income plan in place, then you've got the growth assets. You can be as conservative or aggressive as you feel comfortable with your investments. But oftentimes people are staying too aggressive for too long. And that's why Chris McIntire does offer to put together that game plan for retirement, helping you review and analyze that, better understand the risks that you're taking, the fees that you're paying, the taxes that you'll be liable for, how to create the income, structuring that income plan for you. If you'd like to get your game plan for retirement put together, pick up the phone, give a call, 419-332-0532, 419-332-0532. Again, 419-332-0532, or visit online, McIntyreRetirementServices.com, McIntyreRetirementServices.com. And Chris, I think the sports analogies are appropriate here on your game plan for retirement. We've both seen teams being too aggressive too early in the game or at the wrong time in the game, maybe going for it on fourth down when they are not in the position where that is needed or appropriate, and forcing turnovers that were unnecessary. In fact, you recently did a great interview with Emmy Award-winning anchor from Chicago, Aaron Kennedy, on how do you know if you're taking too much risk. Let's take a segue and check in with Aaron Kennedy and air that segment that you did there on how do you know if you're taking too much risk.
Chris, very good to see you. We're going to start with an important question. Are you taking on too much risk? We have 4 signs that you might be. Risk isn't just about the numbers. It's about how you feel when market conditions change. So let's talk through those 4 signs that you may be taking on more risk than you should. First sign, you check your accounts constantly, but how often is too often?
Well, yeah, I would say looking at it daily is far too often, and, because, the markets go up and go down every single day. And, do not be obsessed with, having to log in and enter it on a spreadsheet somewhere. A lot of times that just causes extra emotions and extra stress.
Right. Absolutely. On that note, though, it is hard to tune out the headlines, right? So sign number 2, do you lose sleep when the market drops?
Yeah, absolutely. And, under our current administration, every once in a while we get some hiccups in the market because of things that the president says. And that can certainly cause people stress. But that's why you have to have your portfolio built around your overall risk tolerance.
Mm-hmm.
And then that, hey, at least the volatility is controlled, or I've mitigated it by implementing a safe strategy, to complement my overall investment strategy as well.
Right. Because when we don't have that plan, we tend to react emotionally. This brings us to sign number 3. You've made panic-driven decisions before. It's known as emotional investing. And the best way to explain this is through George Costanza. Explain what we're looking at here, Chris.
Yeah, and I'm a huge Seinfeld fan here, So, when people get emotional, a lot of times, the market has a real bad day, a real bad week, or a real bad month, and the emotions take over, and you say, you know what, I need to hit the sell button and get out, and then I'll come back in later at some point. And, like you have on the screen here, it's almost, I forget the name of the law that this is, but, when the market's at its peak, that is where sometimes you'll have your most conservative investors want to come in and take risk. And then when the market, like it says here, it has capitulation or despondency at the very bottom, is where people hit the sell button. And actually, that's where the buying opportunities are. So, the best days in the stock market are often right after some of the worst days in the market. And you do not want to miss the best days.
Absolutely. All right. And then the last sign is you feel pressure to chase returns. This is also known as FOMO.
Yes, the fear of missing out. And gold would be a good example this year. Silver would be a good example as well, that, some of the Magnificent 7 stocks that people think, artificial intelligence, the spending is never going to end. And, it just kind of reminds some of us that are a little bit older of that tech bubble back in, in the late 1990s, early 2000, 2001, 2002. So that's why, when you're working with a financial professional, that, we bring logic, not emotion to the table to say, hey, look, what is your true risk tolerance? Because when the market's up 15% for the year, the person's risk tolerance isn't typically what it is. It's when the market goes down 15% where you get to understand their real risk tolerance. And, and that is a moving target as you go throughout your retirement. If you're retired at 62, you still got to have some growth money in there for the long haul, and then as you, transition and get older, then you can certainly get more and more conservative.
Right. You bring up so many important points, and I think it bears repeating. I just want to ask then, how can working with a financial advisor help us stay in line with our risk tolerance?
Yeah, and I would, reach out to the office at 419-332-0532. Heidi will get us all set up, and she does a real nice job at, helping you, with what you need to bring into a meeting like that so that we can begin the process. And again, we don't take an emotional piece in this. We look at it more from a logical side of things. And, not all investors have that ability, of course.
No, of course not. Having a plan that's built on data as opposed to how we feel as humans, so important. Chris, thank you for your time today.
Yeah, my pleasure, Aaron. Thank you.
All right. Well, great segment there. Great interview, Chris, with Aaron Kennedy. Always a pleasure seeing and hearing from Aaron, and your perspective on there was spot on and excellent. Well said. One of the things that goes along with taking too much risk is the impact that it can cause when we are taking withdrawals, these two factors compounding on each other, for a term that a lot of people aren't that familiar with, Chris, which is sequence of returns risk. Ignoring this specific risk is mistake number 4 on your list.
Yeah, without a doubt, Peter. And, that sequence of returns, we're talking about, let's say somebody retired in 2021, for example. Okay. Everything was going pretty well there, coming out of the COVID side of things. The market had recovered, a lot of stimulus money out there. All of a sudden, inflation took off in 2021 and 2022, and the Federal Reserve raised interest rates 11 times in a row, and the stock market and the bond markets fell significant double digits, 15, 20, 25%, depending on which market you're measuring. So if you had $1 million and all of a sudden it was down by, let's just say 20%, now you got 800,000. Well, if you were pulling 4%, we've all heard of that 4% rule, out of your $1 million portfolio that is now 800,000. Okay, now you had to pull out 5%. So that's what, basically a 20% increase in your withdrawal rate.
And they always say, Chris, don't sell when the market is down, right? Now you're forced to. You are selling off when you've already lost value. Those dollars, therefore, don't get to participate when there is an eventual recovery.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, so, when you have a risk mitigation type strategy, some other safe money, whatnot, depending on, lots of different classes that you could be using there, is you can rely on that safe money and leave the risk money alone and then let it recover. And obviously in 2023, 2024, 2025, and hopefully as we go through 2026, we get some continued growth. And I think, right now people are probably a little apprehensive. Are we, with all the geopolitical things that are going on in the world today? And I don't know about you, I can't watch the news anymore. I'm Minneapolis out, I just tired of hearing about that stuff, and, it's bad juju, if you will. And there's a lot of great things that happen every day. So try to find some of that good positive in there. We got good tax relief that we got from the one big beautiful bill that should help get people more money in their pockets through their tax returns from 2025. So, businesses are restructuring. We've got the artificial intelligence piece coming into play to help productivity, and, companies are retooling. So there is a lot of things to feel good about as long as you don't watch the mainstream media. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. Well, don't make the mistake of ignoring sequence of returns risk, ladies and gentlemen. It is an important one. Chris, earlier I mentioned that with the growth money, we could be as aggressive or conservative as we felt comfortable, but that's with the pretense that we do have an income plan in place. So we are sort of building on these mistakes. Don't forget the income planning. And then don't stay too risky. Don't expose yourself to sequence of returns risk. But back to that income plan here, a large part of that, or at least some part of that for most people, a part of the plan is going to be Social Security. And mistake number 5 is far too many of us make a mistake and poorly time our Social Security decision.
Yes, absolutely. And a very important decision. It's kind of what we would call more or less a very permanent decision. It's like what pension option that you're going to take if you're fortunate enough to have a pension from your place of employment is, if we're dealing with a married couple, does one file early? Does one file late? So you can have a bigger survivor benefit. We've got some nice tools and software where we can show clients in real time the different strategies on filing at different years and how much money that would pay out over, your life expectancy, and, if I look at myself, I got a mom that's 88, a dad that's 92, my grandmother lived to be 98. So, we do have some longevity on our side. As you know, Peter, Robin's dad was 96 and a half when he passed away. So, the longer you live, the more important that Social Security strategy is. And if you have longevity on your side, you may want to wait until, 65, 66, 67, all the way to age 70 is a possibility. And again, it's all on an individual basis based off of remaining assets that you have to generate income if you're going to delay taking your Social Security benefit. So big decision.
And it is a decision, not a default. Your point there, Chris, longevity is going to increase the value of higher benefits, and coordination between spouses certainly matters as well. Not enough thought and planning and integration goes into the decision on Social Security, and 40% of America lives on Social Security alone in retirement. It makes that so much more important, ladies and gentlemen. So do not underthink Social Security, and do not underprepare, underestimate, or underplan for taxes. Chris, mistake number 6. People don't think about the taxes in retirement, or as much as they will pay over the lifetime. Try to control that.
Yeah, there's a shock and awe to this almost is, they're happy putting all that money in the 401k and whatnot and saving on their tax bill, throughout the working career. And then they retire and they say, hey, I got $1.5 million in my IRA, my 401k. And then all of a sudden they realize that, oh, hey, the IRS is a partner in this as well. And, in a lot of cases, we're trying to help them maximize income, minimize taxes. And again, it is hard to eliminate it because, like for example, my wife is on Social Security and we have all of our business income. So she's also on Medicare. And, for most people listening to the show today, Medicare takes $200 a month out of your Social Security check, okay, for Medicare, the Part B, right? For my wife, they take $600 a month out because we have the business income. And so, you have to watch getting caught in some of those traps. Health insurance is not free in retirement. And, if you make a big IRA withdrawal, it may impact how your Medicare premiums are pulled out of your Social Security benefit. They call it IRMA, and Peter might know the exact acronym, what it all stands for, but it's
Means you
having,
pay if you make more, you pay more is what it means,
yeah,
right, Chris?
yep, exactly.
And people don't realize that income related monthly adjustment amount, right?
Yeah.
Is how much income do you have? Related to that, we're going to adjust your Medicare premiums into and throughout retirement, right? And that's mistake number 7 is people do not understand the implications of healthcare expenses. A lot of people think Medicare is free. It is not. Part B, Part D, you're going to pay premiums for those. The supplements, the plans, you're going to pay more for those. And Chris, long-term care also needs to be included in your plan for healthcare.
Yeah, and as you and I know, Take Medicare and you're paying $200 a month out of your Social Security benefit for it. And let's say, like my wife is on Plan G for her supplement plan, and whatever that cost, 100 and some bucks a month, and then prescription drug benefit, whatever that costs. So there are people listening to the show today that pay very little for health insurance while they're working. So, for them, they get the sticker shock. For us who've been self-employed paying the bill, and Peter, you're one of those as well. It's like, all right, even though they take $600 a month out of my wife's Social Security benefit, it's cheaper than what we were paying on the private side. So for us, we're actually saving a little bit of money. And where else were we going with that, Peter? We were talking about
long-term care, health
long-term
care,
care.
ignoring those mistakes, Chris. There's a lot of them, right? And
Yeah.
you help people to spot and identify what may have been overlooked in the planning process. And oftentimes people have had access to investments and maybe some advice or guidance on how to invest, which is an important service and an important tool. However, it is not the complete picture. And investing these days, Chris, almost commoditized and democratized. You can get access to the market almost anywhere, but how and where to place those investments? What will they ultimately mean for you? How to create income from them that you're going to pay the least amount in taxes on, that isn't going to cost you unnecessarily in healthcare, to protect yourself from those potential healthcare expenses, paying as little as possible in fees and expenses. I think the biggest mistake of all, Chris, trying to do all of this alone when we have not been in this and done it day to day throughout our career. It is complex, and it gets more complex with age and transitioning into retirement. Again, not the finish line, a big major life and financial transition. Trying to do all that alone, I think, is a big mistake, which is why you're there as a resource, putting together people's your game plan for retirement for the listeners and viewers.
Yes, absolutely. I got a mom in a nursing home right now. My father-in-law had been in a nursing home. We cared for a dear friend of ours who spent a significant amount of time in a nursing home. So we understand the costs and whatnot. So we're a little more passionate about that now and trying to relay that information onto our clients. And, we like to do Roth conversions and tax planning and things like that as well.
Chris, is that one of our biggest opportunities right now, in your opinion, tax planning?
Oh, absolutely. With the favorable tax environment that we have right now, and and looking forward, that certainly doesn't look like it's going to change. Now, obviously, we could get changes in the political environment, and they could pass legislation that would make tax planning not as favorable as it is right now. But man, it's just a wonderful time right now from that the historical tax rates to where they are today. Nobody wants to pay any more than they have to, but that's helping people minimize that tax bill is something that we do that's very rewarding as well.
Well, especially as so many of us have built up these large tax deferred accounts and balances, we've got to have a plan for how to manage those taxes over our lifetime. If not, the government has a plan for us, and it can cause several other dominoes to fall the wrong direction against us. So successful retirement, again, not about perfection. It's about spotting, identifying, and avoiding some of the preventable mistakes, ladies and gentlemen. And success and confidence is built on avoiding those mistakes and creating a plan. And that's why Chris McIntire and the service of the team there at McIntire Retirement Services is so valuable to you, putting together your game plan for retirement. If you would like to get your plan, pick up the phone, give a call, 419-332-0532. 419-332-0532, 419-332-0532. You can also visit at McIntyreRetirementServices.com, McIntyreRetirementServices.com. It would be a mistake to go through this without a guide or a resource. And Chris McIntyre is here to serve as that resource, ladies and gentlemen. So give him a call, 419-332-0532. Chris, it is always a pleasure having you as the resource here on the program and for so many proactive planners, savers, and investors. Thank you for being here and for all you do. As always, good to see you. Stay warm, buddy.
Yep, you got it, Peter. Thanks for listening, everybody. Be safe out there, and springtime's right around the corner here.
Tune into Chris McIntire's full radio program and visit McIntireRetirementServices.com for many additional valuable resources, including other great episodes of Game Plan for Retirement with Chris McIntire. Be sure to subscribe.
The content of this radio show is provided for informational purposes only and is not a solicitation or recommendation of any investment strategy. You are encouraged to seek investment, tax, or legal advice from an independent professional advisor. Any investments and/or investment strategies mentioned involve risk, including the possible loss of principal. Advisory services offered through Brookstone Capital Management, a registered investment advisor.
Fiduciary duty extends solely to investment advisory advice and does not extend to other activities such as insurance or broker-dealer services. Advisory clients are charged a quarterly fee for assets under management, while insurance products pay a commission, which may result in a conflict of interest regarding compensation.